All right. If hypocrisy were a renewable resource, James Comer could single-handedly power the entire eastern seaboard for the next century, because what you are about to see is a level of cognitive dissonance that would make a psychiatrist quit their job on the spot. In a House Oversight hearing on January 21st, Representative Robert Garcia confronted Chairman James Comer about his move to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress for allegedly defying subpoenas, despite them providing sworn declarations. Garcia came prepared with a list of receipts proving that Comer has happily accepted far less from Trump-era officials and completely ignored the defiance of his own committee members, leading to a humiliation so visceral you almost need to watch it through your fingers. Let's watch what happened, and I will give you my take at the end.
Thank you, Representative Brown. I just want to Chairman, I want to just respond to something that you said. I think it's important. First, I just want to read the folks of who the subpoenas you have chosen not to enforce. Alberto Gonzales, who we subpoenaed on that same day, I believe, you did not enforce. Eric Holder, of course, former AG, did not enforce. Loretta Lynch, you chose not to enforce. Jeff Sessions, you chose not to enforce. Merrick Garland, who I think it'd be important to have answer questions, you chose not to enforce. James Comey, you chose not to enforce. In fact, I have Attorney General Gonzales's letter. It says, "Dear Chairman Comer, this letter is to confirm that consistent with my conversations with the committee general counsel, I have no present memory or decisions or conversations related to the investigation and prosecution of Epstein matter during my tenure as U.S. Attorney General." He, of course, was the Attorney General when the whole Alex Acosta U.S. Attorney matter was in front of a critical time in this investigation. Now, you chose not to enforce that because you mentioned that this letter is under penalty of perjury. The declaration that Clintons also made and sent to you to answer some of those questions were also under penalty of perjury. I just want to clarify that. And then with the remainder of my time, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to note that you've talked a lot about the importance of our subpoenas and that we should all support this committee's subpoenas. And I agree with you, sir, and I want to hear from the Clintons. It's also important to note that we have members of this committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Andy Biggs, Congressman Scott Perry, who are obviously very outspoken, which we like to engage with. Now, they're not here, and that's okay. Now, you also know, sir, that all three of them defied legally binding subpoenas issued by the January 6th committee relating to their efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So we should be clear that the majority chooses to be very selective on which subpoenas they want to enforce or talk about. We have members of the majority that themselves have defied subpoenas. So once again, I ask you, Mr. Chairman, let's ask President Clinton the questions that we have. Let's have him come in and testify in a way that we can negotiate, and let's get all the release of the files done immediately. Thank you.
Would you yield? Could I respond to that?
Sure. I have no more time, but I'm happy to respond.
So you say we didn't enforce the subpoenas. We did enforce. They complied and testified under the penalty of perjury that they had no knowledge. Now, the Clinton declarations were short bullet points, almost like talking points. And the evidence is clear that the Clintons did have relationship with them. Now, again, I've said publicly millions of times, there's no one's accusing the Clintons of wrongdoing, but the fact that they were that close, and the fact that I've never seen a sit-down interview with Bill Clinton where he's answered questions about his relationship with Epstein and Maxwell like the current president has. So we have complied and enforced all of our subpoenas, 100% of our subpoenas. So I just want to make that very clear.
Can I respond to you, sir? Sure. Just to be clear, you're talking about two declarations. The declaration that you chose to use as something that you moved on to not bring him in was 1/6 the size of the Clinton declaration. I'm looking at the Alberto Gonzales response to you, sir, that you chose to dismiss, and it is one sentence long. You just pointed out the Clinton declaration, which is 6 times as long. And so I just think you are using interesting points to make comparisons. Let's just be clear and get back to the facts. Let's bring President Clinton in to have a conversation with this committee. You are instead choosing to try to prosecute President Clinton and send him to jail, which is part of criminal prosecution, before having him answer questions to this committee. Him and his team have been trying to negotiate. We want to hear from President Clinton. I'm not sure that you do, sir.
You don't think I want to hear from President
Chairman
Clinton?
Comer, can I Chairman?
So But before I recognize Ms. Luna, who'll be next, I believe, are you willing to accept those bullet points as testimony, or do you want to hear from Clinton?
I want to hear from President Clinton.
Then I don't know what the point is of talking about their bullet points. I mean, that we all know they had a relationship. So.
Well, sir, I'm just responding to the fact that you mentioned that you're dismissing other legal subpoenas with one-sentence answers. And you're the one that pointed out the Clinton's declaration, which is also under penalty of perjury.
Do you think that Eric Holder or Lynch or Jeff Sessions or Merrick Garland had more? I mean, do you want to bring them all in?
I would love to have former Attorney General Merrick Garland in front of this committee to answer questions as to why more of the files weren't released. I've actually said that publicly. And so, sir, I think what it comes down to is we all want to get to the truth. We all want justice for the survivors. And I think more information is better. And so I think our position is that it is clear to me that President Clinton is negotiating to come in front of this committee. And it may not be exactly what you and the lawyer and your team want to see as far as that negotiation, or you're not satisfied with the progress, but they continue to negotiate. They have not ruled out a transcript. Let's get them in front of this committee. Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Mr. Gill, then Ms. Lona. Mr. Gill.
I want to dig into the specific facts here because Representative Garcia touched on something that James Comer is desperately trying to bury. I did some digging into the procedural history here, and what Comer is doing is actually more cynical than it looks. First, let's talk about the one-sentence standard. Comer admitted in this clip that he accepted a one-sentence letter from former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales as compliance, one sentence. That is literally shorter than my Chipotle order. Yet, he is rejecting a detailed declaration from the Clintons, which was also under penalty of perjury, as bullet points. But here is the mechanism they are exploiting. The Congressional Research Service explicitly states that the Supreme Court has authorized Congress to obtain what is needed. It further clarifies that this is often achieved through a traditional process of negotiation and accommodation. Comer chose to decide that a one-sentence letter from a Republican was what was needed, but is choosing to decide that a detailed declaration from a Democrat is not. It isn't a legal distinction. It is a political choice disguised as a procedural one. Second, we need to talk about the names Garcia rattled off: Jim Jordan, Andy Biggs, and Scott Perry. A real who's who of please don't look at my text messages. Garcia is correct. The January 6th committee issued legally binding subpoenas to all three of them in 2022. I looked up the official report from the January 6th committee, and it confirms that not only did they refuse to comply, but Jim Jordan publicly argued that the subpoenas violated core legislative privileges. Fast forward to today, and that same Jim Jordan is sitting on the very committee that is threatening to jail political opponents for defying subpoenas. You literally cannot make this up. Third, look at the strategy here. Comer claims, I have never seen a sit-down interview with Bill Clinton where he's answered questions. That is the tell. This isn't about gathering facts. Written testimony under oath does that. This is about generating a video clip. They want the visual of a former Democratic president being grilled by Republicans for Fox News B-roll. By refusing to accept the written testimony, they create a conflict that justifies a contempt vote. It's a content creation strategy, not an investigation. Finally, there is virtually no public reporting suggesting that Gonzales, Holder, or Lynch faced anywhere near this level of aggression from this committee for similar responses. When Comer says we enforced 100% of our subpoenas, that is demonstrably false based on the fact that his own colleagues are sitting next to him, unprosecuted, after shredding theirs. So if anyone asks you what's happening, here is the line. Republicans are criminalizing compliance for Democrats while normalizing defiance for themselves. So let's be clear about what this actually means, beyond the political theater. If you or I received a congressional subpoena and decided to just send a one-sentence note saying we didn't recall anything, or worse, just didn't show up like Jim Jordan, we wouldn't get a gavel and a chairmanship. We would get handcuffs, and probably a lot of legal bills. The fact that there is a two-tiered justice system being championed by the party of law and order should offend every American who actually pays their parking tickets. When you weaponize the subpoena power like this, you break the mechanism of oversight forever. According to legal scholars who study Congress, when subpoenas become purely partisan tools, they lose their enforceability in the courts because judges start viewing them as political harassment rather than legitimate legislative acts. Comer isn't just wasting time, he is eroding the only tool Congress has to hold the executive branch accountable, all for a segment on Newsmax. And for what? To find the truth? If they wanted the truth, they would accept the sworn declarations and move on to the evidence. No. This is to keep the Clinton name in the headlines in 2026 to distract from their own lack of legislative accomplishments. It is an ego-driven fishing expedition funded by your tax dollars. The consensus is that contempt of Congress, which used to be a rare and serious charge, is being cheapened into a participation trophy for the GOP base. As of right now, Comer is still moving forward with the contempt resolution, despite the fact that the Clintons have cooperated more than the Republicans on the committee ever did. This isn't about accountability. It isn't about justice for survivors, as Garcia rightly pointed out they all want. If it were, they wouldn't be shielding their own members who tried to overturn an election. This is about power. It's about establishing the precedent that the law is a weapon to be wielded against enemies and a shield to protect friends. Remember the hurricane analogy? They're currently ripping the roof off the house and blaming the rain. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.